If you want to have it all with your side steps, good looks, capability, flexibility, convenience, and a great wow factor, then the AMP Research Plug and Play Smart Series Power Steps give you all that and more. These are a great way to get some extra protection and access to your 2019 to 2024 Ram 1500 with essentially no sacrifice. Now, we talk about a lot of side steps around these parts, but AMP Research's Power Step running boards are not your typical side steps by any stretch of the imagination. And the Smart Series Plug and Play ones we have here bundle all the goodness of those popular steps with a few added bits of convenience. Now, these are, of course, as the name implies, power side steps, so they're designed to deploy the moment you open the door, and it is really a cool party trick. Now, the benefit to a power step like these is twofold. When they're extended, they drop much lower than a traditional fixed side step, meaning that you have better access to the cabin of the truck. And when they're retracted, they sit up closer to the rocker panels, creating more ground clearance and a super clean look. Since nothing is hanging down low in a fixed position like a more traditional side step or running board, having these on has almost no impact on your overall ground clearance or breakover angle. So if you do happen to do some more challenging off-roading or overlanding, there's a much lower chance of these getting snagged on something, and they're going to provide your rocker panel with similar protection to a smaller side step or even a rock slider. Now, these again are going to deploy almost immediately upon opening the door. By the time you've got it opened even a small amount, the boards are down in their lowered position. And when you close the door, they stay down for 3 seconds before fully retracting. And because these are the Smart Series, they do away with the old manual override switch, and they give you the flexibility of an app-based controller. So you can deploy or retract them via an app on your smartphone. Just tap the button and they'll pop right down or go right back up. That app also allows you to control the LED lights that are included, and you can power down the steps if you're going to be letting your truck sit for a while. It gives you a lot more control and convenience, and you don't have to go unplugging things or opening the truck up to utilize the steps. They've also got a few more party tricks up their sleeves. The steps feature a 600-pound weight capacity, so they can handle pretty much anything you could think of to throw at them. And again, as I already kind of mentioned, they do also feature integrated LED lights. You get a pair for each board to help illuminate the ground and the stepping surface, so it makes it safe for you to access your truck no matter what conditions you might encounter. And the best part, the whole setup is designed to be pretty much entirely plug and play. So these are designed to integrate with your OBD2 port on your truck, so really you don't have to do much wiring at all. Most everything plugs in. You're just wiring up those lights, getting power and ground for the harness, and then you plug this in. No extraneous stuff there, which makes installation just that much easier. The steps are constructed using die-cast aluminum, which is anodized and then finished off with a military-grade PTFE coating. The step surface is a massive 6 inches wide, and it features that textured black powder coating for additional grip as well. Plus, you've got those LEDs in there for extra visibility, and you get all the brackets, the motors, the wiring, and everything included. Overall, this is a really nice bit of kit, and they're about some of the nicest side steps you can get for these trucks. However, if you want to play, you got to be willing to pay. And that brings us nicely to price, which is about the only place where you should really plan on sacrificing anything. Coming in at around $2,100. These do command a premium, but they certainly are a premium option. Now, in my book, if you've got the room in your budget for these, I think they make a great addition to your build. They're easy, they look great, they provide you all the protection and access you could ever want, and they're just a really neat party trick when you open the door of your truck. Installation is going to get a 2 out of 3 on our difficulty meter, and the job should take you around 3 hours to complete. Now, these are again designed to be plug and play and integrated with your OBD2 port, but you do still have to route that wiring, and you got to wire up those lights. So plan on setting some time aside to get this done. Otherwise though, everything is just going to bolt right onto your truck, so you don't have to make any permanent modifications in order to get these installed. And now we're going to show you the process, so for that, let's head on out to the shop.
Tools required for this install include a ratchet, plastic pry tool, scissors or diagonal cutters, 10mm ratcheting wrench, 13mm wrench, wire strippers and crimpers, 5/32 and 3/16 inch Allen sockets, 10, 12, and 13mm sockets, and some zip ties. What's up guys? Today we're installing power side steps on our Ram, so let's get started. So I'm going to start in the engine bay with our wiring. I'll get this out of the way first. I've got our harness kind of laid out how it's going to go. There's going to be a shorter side and a longer side. Shorter side's going to go down to the driver's side, and the longer side's going to go over to the passenger. Now once we've got that laid out, I'm going to come to our inline fuses on our positive cable and just pop these covers off. And I'm just going to wiggle out my fuses. Then we'll pop those back in later. Now we're going to take our battery terminal connectors, hook them up to the battery. So I'm going to take a 12mm socket to loosen up this nut on my positive terminal. And then you can lay that connector on there. Thread your nut back on and tighten that down. Now I'm going to switch over to a 10mm socket to remove the nut on the negative. And thread your nut back on. Take a 10mm socket and tighten that down. And then we can grab our controller. We're going to be plugging that into this connector. So just get all your wires organized. This yellow one's going to go down towards here, towards a grommet to get into our driver's side footwell. This wire here is going down to the floor. So press that in until you hear that click. I'm going to tuck this away into our battery tray. This harness I'm going to run across the cowl. I'm just going to put that over there. Next, I'm going to run this yellow wire into the cabin. This is going to be for our OBD2 plug-in. Now there's a grommet wedged down here in between our brake booster and this module. We're just going to push this through that grommet. If we need to, we can go inside the truck and pull it the rest of the way through. Next, we can take the shorter harness that's connecting to our motor, and we're just going to feed this down towards the ground. I'm going to go in between this wire harness and this module, and we can just go right down by the fender liner. Now I'm just going down, found my wire, so I can start pulling that through. Just make sure you're not getting caught on anything. Now we're going to take the longer side of our harness and run this over towards the passenger side. I'm going to start over here on the driver's side just by tucking our wire behind our brake fluid reservoir. And then we've got this wire harness in this plastic cover going across the whole engine bay. I'm going to zip tie around that to keep my wire nice and out of the way of anything moving or hot in the engine bay. You can route this however you'd like. If you find a better way, by all means go for it. I'm just going to get a zip tie back there around this. I'm just going to get that loosely started for now until I get my other zip ties in. And once you have all these in, you can tighten up your zip ties. And then take a pair of scissors or diagonal cutters, cut off the excess. And now with that cleanly run across to the other side, we're just going to do the exact same thing we did with the harness going to the floor on the driver's side. Just going to run it right down here on the outside of the frame rail, in between the frame rail and the fender liner, and down to the floor. And now this harness is diving down close to our valve cover here. So I'm just going to put one more zip tie over here, just to keep it out of the way of that. Next, we can hop into the driver's seat and start wiring up our OBD2 connector. Now we have this connector that's going to go into a panel behind here. So I'm going to pop that out and this out just to get good access to it. And then we're going to be splicing this yellow wire into the yellow wire that we passed through the firewall earlier. So I'm going to start off with our side panel. You can pull this weather stripping down a little bit. If you press in on this, you can get a really small pry tool in there, and then use that opening to get a bigger one that you can pry on to pop those clips out. And then right behind this bracket, there's a bunch of connectors here in this panel. We're just looking for any open spot for that to go into. And then we're going to come down to our light control panel. pop that out and lay it down. Now I'm gonna grab our yellow wire. I'm gonna pull that cap off the ends. I'm gonna twist up all of this lead. I'm gonna cut a little bit off. Got a little bit too much here. Twist that up. And then you're gonna take a butt connector, slide that on. Take a pair of wire crimpers and crimp down on that. And just give it a little tug, make sure it's not going anywhere. And then come down to your OBD2 connector. Now this one, I'm gonna take a little bit more off of, a little more lead. Once again, twist it up. Grab the other side of the butt connector, slide that in. And once again, wire crimpers and crimp down on that. Make sure it's not going anywhere. And then we're gonna take this wire and feed it up through here. Grab it, and then we're gonna be connecting it into this panel. Right where my finger is, we have an open slot. So I've got it slid into the top right from your point of view. And I'm just gonna press it in, click it into place. And I can start reinstalling my panels. Feed that weather strip back into place. And we can go down and plug in our OBD2. And now we'll just plug this into our OBD2 connector. And then now we're done with the interior. So now we're hopping underneath the truck. We have a new bracket for this connector that we need to install. We've got 2 bolts here, 1 bolt hidden behind the connector. So I'm gonna use a 10mm socket to get this one out, and we're gonna have to grab a ratcheting wrench. And now we need to pop our connector off the bracket. We've just got a clip here and a locating pin there. And now we can install our new bracket. So we're gonna be reusing 2 out of 3 of those factory bolts. The last one's not gonna be used. And now I'm gonna take a 10mm socket and tighten down these 2 bolts. And then we can press these 2 tabs into our new bracket. So now we're ready to install our linkages onto the truck. Now we have 2 different linkages here. Now this one has the spot for the motor. If you're looking at this Amp Research logo, the driver side one is going to be on the left here. The passenger side is going to be on the opposite side. And then we have our idler pulleys that are just a normal bracket. There's no motor attachment for them. So the idler is going to go in the back, and the one with the motor is going to go in the front. We're going to get underneath. We've got some nuts included in our kit. We're going to take a 13mm socket, tighten everything down. So now we can lift up our motor linkage into place. Now we're going to have to thread this nut on first because that spot for the motor is going to block it. So I'm just going to slide it on a little bit just so I can get that nut started. I'm going to have to pull it out a little bit. I'm just going to get that one snug first because we have to use a wrench on that one. The other 2 we'll be able to get a socket on. So take a 13mm socket to tighten down these 2, and then we'll grab a 13mm wrench for that tight one. Grab your wrench, snug this bottom one up. And now once you've got your motor linkage installed, you can do the same thing for your idler linkage. The only difference is that this nut is going to be a lot easier to get to on the back. So now we're ready to mount up our side step. Now we've got these holes cut in our bracket here that are gonna line up with these silver brackets. These have threaded holes for our Allen bolts that are gonna go through the bottom of the bracket and up into these silver brackets. So you're just gonna line them up with those holes, and then you can flip it over and lay it down. And now I'm just gonna go under, thread in one of my bolts, just a couple threads by hand on each side, and then we can slide this back and forth to get it centered. It doesn't look like our bracket's quite lined up over here. And once you have one bolt in on each, you can get your other bolt in there. And then do the same thing for the other bracket. And then we're gonna take a 3/16 Allen socket and tighten those down. So now we're ready to mount up our motor here. Now this piece has tape on it out of the box. I just took that tape off, and now we need to mount this up. This is going to be the orientation it's going in. So we're just going to rotate this until our gear slides into place, just like that. And then we're going to be taking our Allen bolts with flat washers, threading them into all three of these holes. Now I'm just going to run this in. I'm not going to fully tighten it down. I just want it to hold while I install my other two. And now I'm just going to be using a 5/32 Allen socket to thread in my other two bolts. And I'll just throw my ratchet on the back of that and tighten these down. So now we just need to finalize our wiring. So I'm going to take our connector and plug that into our motor. Press it in until you get that click. And then we have our wires for our lights that we need to splice in. So now we can install our lights. Now we're going to be doing this 7 inches behind our front linkage and then 8 inches in front of our rear linkage. Now AMP wants you to drill a 9/32 hole through the pinch weld, and then they give you this grommet that you can put in here to run your wires through and connect up to your light. Now for demonstration purposes, we're not going to be drilling through the pinch weld, so I'm just going to mount this here and have our wires running under, just like that. So now we have 2 lights. We're just going to be matching up the red to the black and using these butt connectors to crimp down on those. So now if you do drill through your pinch weld, you're going to want to run these wires through the pinch weld first to connect up to your light. Since we're not doing that, I'm just going to do it out here on the floor so we have a better angle and we're not doing it up under the body. So you're going to take a pair of wire strippers and strip some lead off of these wires. And then you're going to twist up the lead. And then you can slide your butt connectors on. Crimp down on that. Do that same thing on the other one. And just give those a good tug. Make sure they're not going anywhere. And then you can grab your light. We're going to pop off those 2 end caps. Spread our wires, twist up that lead, and then just red to red, black to black. Slide that in there, grab your crimpers, and then slide your black into your black. Twist up that lead a little more. Now that's in there. grab your crimpers and crimp down. Once again, give it a good tug, make sure it's not going anywhere, and then do that same exact thing for your other light. So now we can mount up these lights. We're just gonna go approximately 7 inches behind the front, 8 inches in front of the rear. So just pull that double-sided tape pad. And we'll get this one up in there. And now we'll just do that same thing on the rear. And now we can go underneath and tidy up our wires. So now we just need to get under here and zip tie up all of our wires. You can do this however you would like, however you can neatly run it. Next to this bin here, I've got an open hook that I can run a zip tie through to bring up the wires from our light. Now we're going to take a pair of diagonal cutters. You can also use scissors and cut the excess of that zip tie. And then I'm going to run this around the body mount. We've got our harness up here that we can zip tie to. So I'm going to take up all of my slack. So now I'm going to bunch up all my excess here and just go right onto that harness. And now I'll cut the excess of that zip tie. And now that we have all of our wires out of the way, you can repeat that whole process on the other side. Now we can come back into the engine bay and grab our inline fuse covers and pop our fuses back in. Now, since our steps are in the downward position where they would be when the doors open, I just went ahead and opened the driver door on both sides. And then we'll just pop our fuses in. Close those up and tuck them down out of the way. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the Amp Research PowerStep Smart Series running boards plug and play for your 2019 and newer Ram 1500. Thank you for watching, and for all things Ram, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.